Evan Cole had always believed he would live and die as a quiet human engineer on a forgotten moon. The small research outpost where he worked was far from any major human colony. Hidden between tall blue-leafed trees and endless ridges of silver soil, most days were calm. He repaired scanners, checked energy lines, cooked simple meals, and watched the twin suns rise. Nothing dramatic ever happened on this moon. No visitors, no dangers, only silence and the soft hum of machines. But that peace ended the day the sky tore open. Evan was outside fixing the sensor tower when he heard a thunderous boom. The sky flashed with streaks of burning metal. Something large, something enormous ripped through the clouds in flames. He froze, watching the object crash deep into the forest with a violent shockwave that shook the ground under his boots. Birds scattered, dust rose, the air trembled. For a moment he thought it might be a meteor. But then he saw pieces of dark armor plating falling from the sky. That was no meteor. It was a ship. Evan hesitated. The moon was safe, but the galaxy was not. Many species traveled through human space. Some were friendly, some were cautious, some were dangerous. But no matter who it was, a crash like that meant someone was injured or trapped. Evan was the only human on this side of the moon. There was no one else to help. He grabbed his medkit, his portable scanner, and a small energy torch. Then he set off toward the crash through the tall trees, following smoke rising into the sky. The walk took nearly an hour. He moved carefully, clearing branches, listening for any sign of life. When he reached the crash site, he stopped in shock. The ship was not small. At all, it was a royal-class escape pod from the Valrix Dominion, one of the most feared empires in the galaxy. Its curved black armor and glowing blue lines were unmistakable. Humans knew these symbols well. Valrix were cold, logical, and powerful. Their queen was said to rule with ice in her veins. Even their soldiers spoke with rigid, emotionless voices. Evan's heartbeat quickened. If this pod belonged to a high-rank Valrix, he could be in danger. But he could also not walk away from someone who might be dying. He approached slowly. The front of the pod was cracked open. Sparks danced around broken wires. Thick smoke rose from the engine. With one steady breath, Evan climbed inside. Air was hot, metallic, and heavy with the smell of burnt fuel. Then he saw her. A tall woman lay against the wall of the pod, her armor cracked in several places. Her skin was a pale silver blue, glowing softly under the dim emergency lights. Her eyes were closed. A crown-like headpiece rested on her forehead, though damaged. Her breathing was shallow and uneven. One arm was twisted at an uncomfortable angle. Evan swallowed. He recognized her instantly, not because he had seen her in person, but because every species knew her image. Queen Zirla of the Valrix Dominion, the Cold Queen, the ruler who trusted no one, the leader whose speeches sounded like commands carved from stone. People said she had never smiled in her life. People said she felt nothing, and now she was lying helpless in a broken pod, alone with no guards, no soldiers, no empire. Evan stepped closer, keeping his movements calm. He tested the air for toxin safe. He scanned her for injuries, synergy burns, fractured arm, and severe exhaustion. Her life signs were weak, but stable. He knelt beside her carefully. "Can you hear me?" he asked softly. Her eyes opened just a little, glowing, bright, icy blue. She looked at him as if trying to decide whether he was real. Her gaze held authority, even in weakness. She studied him, confused, guarded, but aware. When she tried to move, pain crossed her face. "Do not touch me, human," she whispered in a faint voice, though the strength behind her words was still there. "You're hurt," Evan replied gently. "I'm here to help." She seemed to struggle with the idea, blinking slowly. "Why?" she asked. "You owe me nothing. I don't need a reason to help someone who's injured," he said. Her brow tightened, as if she could not understand such a simple sentence. Valrix culture valued strength and control. Kindness was seen as a strategy, never a natural act. For a moment, she looked almost lost, unsure how to respond. The pod shuddered suddenly, sending sparks into the air. Evan knew it could collapse or explode at any moment. "You can't stay here," he said firmly. I'm taking you to my outpost. It's safe. She stared at him, clearly surprised. I am your enemy. Not right now, he said. Right now, you're someone who needs help. For several seconds, she said nothing. She looked at his face not with her usual cold judgment, but with something softer, like she was trying to understand him. Finally, she let her head rest back, too weak to argue. Evan lifted her carefully, avoiding her injured arm. She was heavier than she looked, her armor adding weight. But he carried her through the forest, step by steady step. She occasionally opened her eyes to watch him. She seemed confused every time she woke, as if expecting him to abandon her. But he never did. After a long walk, they reached the outpost. Evan placed her on the only clean medical bed he had. He gently removed the damaged parts of her armor and cleaned her burns. He treated her wounds slowly, always explaining what he was doing so she wouldn't feel threatened. She watched him closely the entire time. You risk much, she murmured. It's fine, he said. For me, she asked, her voice barely more than a breath. For anyone, he corrected quietly. She seemed to think deeply about that. Her cold gaze softened just a little. When he finished wrapping her injuries, he prepared a nutrient solution. Valric's biology was different from humans, so he used whatever safe components he had. He placed the container near her. You need rest, he said softly. Your body is exhausted. Cyrilla looked around the room, noticing how small and simple it was. A single table, a few tools, 2 chairs, and shelves full of equipment. Nothing royal, nothing powerful, but everything clean and organized. You live like this? She asked weakly. For now, he said with a small smile, I don't need much. She studied his face again. Her voice turned quieter. You did not fear me? I didn't see a queen when I found you, he said. I saw someone who needed help. Something in her expression changed. Not fully, not dramatically, but subtly like the first crack in ice after a long winter. She wasn't used to being treated gently. She wasn't used to someone caring for her without wanting anything in return. Evan adjusted the lights so they were dim and comfortable. He moved slowly, respectfully, never making sudden motions. Cyrilla watched every step, her eyes following him until they grew heavy with exhaustion. You are strange, human, she whispered. He gave a soft laugh. I get that a lot. She blinked slowly, almost in disbelief at the tone of his voice. No one in her empire spoke so casually near her. No one dared to. Ow. But Evan wasn't speaking to a queen. He was speaking to a person. And she could feel the difference. As she finally drifted into sleep, a calm settled over the room. The hum of machines mixed with the quiet sound of her breathing. Evan sat in a chair beside her, keeping watch, ready to help if she needed anything. And somewhere in the quiet of that small outpost, something unexpected began. Not a treaty, not an alliance, not a political shift. Something smaller, something warmer. A human's kindness silently reached, a heart that had never known it. Part 1 ends here. Queen Cyrilla woke slowly, as if rising from the bottom of a deep ocean. For a moment, she did not know where she was. The ceiling above her was simple metal, not the tall crystal ceiling of her royal chambers. The air smelled faintly of herbs, and clean tools, not the cold, filtered scent of her flagship. She turned her head and felt a sharp pull of pain in her arm. Her breath caught. Then she saw him sitting beside her bed. Evan Cole, human engineer who had carried her out of the crashed pod, sat quietly with a small datapad in his hands. His boots were dusty, and his hair was messy in a natural, unbothered way. He seemed tired, but peaceful. When he noticed her eyes open, he offered her a gentle smile. You're awake, he said softly. That's good. Your body needed rest. Cyrilla stared at him silently. She was not used to waking in the presence of anyone without guards. She was not used to seeing someone look relieved simply because she opened her eyes. In her empire, people looked at her with fear, expectation, or cold loyalty. But this human looked at her with something else entirely, something she could not understand yet. How long was I unconscious? She asked, her voice quiet but steady. Almost a full day, Evan said. Your injuries were worse than I thought. But you're healing. She tried to sit up. Pain shot through her shoulder. She winced, and Evan quickly reached forward, stopping her with a gentle hand. Not forceful, not commanding, just thoughtful. "Easy," he said. "You don't need to move yet. Your arm needs more time." Zarella looked at his hand on her uninjured arm. Valric's soldiers never touched her unless necessary. Even her advisors kept their distance. But this human touched her with care, not caution. She slowly relaxed and allowed herself to lean back again. "Your people," she began slowly. "They will come for you." "In a few days," he said, "but it takes time. The outpost's signal transmitter isn't strong enough for fast communication, so it's just the two of us for now. The two of them, alone, in a place far from her empire. If her council knew this, there would be panic. They would think humans had captured her. Armies would prepare for war. But none of that mattered at this moment. Right now, she felt something else, something quiet. Evan stood and walked to a small counter where he had prepared food. He poured a warm liquid into a cup that matched her biology and carried it back to her. "Try this," he said. "It will help your energy levels." She looked at the cup as if inspecting a weapon. "You offer nourishment to someone your species fears?" "I'm not afraid of you," he said softly. Her eyes lifted to meet his. No one had ever said such a sentence to her directly. Being feared was a part of her identity. Being respected was her throne. Being obeyed was her normal, but this human did not treat her like a queen or a threat. Treated her like a person who needed care. With slow movements, she lifted the cup with her good arm and drank. The warm liquid soothed her throat. When she finished, she handed the cup back to him. "You continue to assist me," she said, "without request." "I don't need a request," he replied. "It's the right thing to do." Her eyes narrowed, not in anger but in confusion. Valric's culture did not understand actions without purpose. Sacrifice without reward. Help without command. She studied his face carefully, searching for hidden motives. But she found none. Only sincerity. "What are humans truly like?" she asked after a long pause. "My empire says you are unpredictable and dangerous." Evan laughed softly. "Well, some are. But most of us are just people who want to live, work, eat, sleep, and get through each day without trouble. Sometimes we help others because it feels right." She thought deeply about his answer. It sounded simple. Too simple. But something inside her understood it a little more than she expected. Hours passed slowly. Evan checked her injuries, changed her bandages, and repaired broken tech pieces from her suit. Zarella watched his hands work with calm skill. He moved with purpose, yet never rushed. She realized he was treating her injuries with the same care he would give to any life form in trouble. Outside, the forest was quiet except for distant creatures calling across the hills. Sunset light filtered through the small window, casting warm gold onto the floor. At one point, Zarella shifted slightly and felt a sharp ache in her ribs. Evan immediately noticed pain. He asked. She hesitated, then nodded once. He adjusted a support cushion behind her to ease her breathing. His touch was light but steady. She felt warmth, physical warmth. Yes, but also something warmer inside her chest. She had no word for it yet. "You are unusual," she said slowly, "because I'm helping you, because you do not ask anything in return." Evan sat down again, resting his elbows on his knees. "Not everything is about getting something back," he said. "Sometimes doing good is enough." She watched him in silence. His simple words carried more weight than he realized. No one in her empire believed that. No alliance was without cost. No action without purpose. Her entire life had been built on structure, order, strength. But this human was not operating under any structure. He was simply being himself. Later that evening, the outpost suddenly shook. A deep growl echoed from outside. Zarella tensed instantly, her instincts ready for danger. Evan grabbed his scanner and checked the readings. "Just a forest beast," he said. "It won't come close unless it smells food." "You sound sure. I've lived here for years. I know their patterns." Zarella looked toward the door as if expecting an attack. She was used to threats, two enemies waiting in shadows. But Evan calmly returned to his seat and continued repairing a part of her suit. "You are not alarmed," she said. "I'm used to this place," he replied. "I learned how to live with the world instead of fighting it." Learning to live with the world, Not conquer it, not command it, just live with it. Another concept unfamiliar to her people. Slowly, she closed her eyes and took a controlled breath. When she opened them again, Evan was still there, focused on her gear. She found her gaze lingering on him longer than she intended. "There is something else," she said quietly. "When you shielded me from falling debris, why did you risk yourself?" He paused, looking up. "I didn't think about it," he said honestly. "You were in danger." "I reacted. It is not logical," she said. "It's human," he corrected with a gentle smile. She felt her chest tighten not with pain, but with something warm and unfamiliar. Something that made her heartbeat feel slightly different. She looked away for a moment, trying to understand herself. That night, Evan set up a small portable heater so she wouldn't feel cold. He dimmed the lights and checked her bandages one last time. "If you need anything," he said, "just say my name." Zirla watched him standing in the soft light. He looked ordinary, simple, almost fragile compared to the powerful soldiers of her empire. Yet she realized something surprising. She trusted him. She, the queen who trusted no one. "You have shown me more kindness in 2 days," she said quietly, "than many in my empire have shown me in my entire life." Evan looked at her with gentle eyes. "Everyone deserves kindness," he said. "Even you." She did not expect those words. They touched something deep, something old, something hidden under years of duty and cold discipline. As she drifted into sleep again, she felt safe, something she had not felt since childhood. Evan stayed nearby, keeping watch as the forest wind whispered outside, and in that small outpost, under soft lights and quiet shadows, the cold heart of a queen took another small step toward warmth. Part 2 ends here. Queen Zarella did not wake to silence this time. She woke to the sound of heavy rain beating against the roof of the outpost. The metal walls trembled softly under the storm's force. A cold wind slipped through the cracks of the old building, carrying the scent of wet soil and electric tension. She opened her eyes slowly and found the room dim. Lit only by a small emergency lamp, Evan was standing near the door, wearing his weather jacket and checking the seals around the frame to keep water from leaking in. His movements were calm and steady despite the storm outside. She watched him for a moment, observing the way he pushed his hair back from his forehead, wiped rainwater from his hands. He noticed her staring and gave a small smile. "You're awake. Good. How do you feel?" She tested her arm carefully. The pain was still there, but it was calmer now, warmer and dull, instead of sharp and harsh. "Improved," she said. "The storm, is it dangerous?" "It can be," he admitted. "The winds get strong on this moon. But I've reinforced the outpost over the years. We'll be fine." The word echoed in her mind like an unfamiliar melody. In her empire, she never said we. She said I. She said the Dominion. She said my orders. But here she was part of something shared, even if small and temporary. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the room. For a brief moment, Evan's face was highlighted in bright white light. Zarella felt a small spark in her chest, a sensation she could not name. "You should rest more," Evan said gently. "Your body still needs time." "I have rested long enough," she replied. "I am not weak." "I never said you were," he said, and his honest tone softened her again. He walked to her bedside and checked the monitors he had attached to help track her healing progress. His fingers moved carefully, adjusting settings, making sure nothing caused discomfort. She watched every motion closely. "You take care of me as though I am fragile," she said. "I take care of you because you're injured," he corrected simply. "Not because you're fragile." She held his gaze, trying to understand the difference. In her world, fragility and injury were the same. But in his world, injury was temporary. Something to mend, not something to judge. Thunder rumbled across the sky, shaking the windows. Zarella felt a small jolt of panic and instinctive memory of the crash, the fire, the helplessness. Her breath quickened without her permission. Evan immediately noticed. "Hey," he said in a calm voice, setting the scanner down. "It's just the storm. It can't hurt you in here." She tried to force her breathing steady, but the memory clung to her. Evan stepped closer, keeping his voice low and gentle. "Look at me," he said softly. She did. "You're safe," he said. "Nothing can reach you tonight." His voice grounded her. Slow, warm, human. She felt her panic ease, replaced by something calmer. Something she could rely on. When she finally breathed normally again, she felt almost embarrassed. No one had ever seen her afraid, not her generals, not her council, not even her own guards. But this human had seen her at her lowest. And he treated her without mockery or weakness. "Thank you," she whispered. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "It's natural to be scared after what you went through." "Not for my people," she replied. "We do not show fear." "Maybe that's why fear hurts more when it does appear," Evan said gently. Zirla looked at him with quiet surprise. She had never considered that idea. In her empire, fear was denied, not understood. After a long moment, she asked, "Evan, why do you not fear me?" He paused and thought, "Because I've seen you hurt. I've seen you confused and unsure. I've seen you trust me, even a little. How can I fear someone I've seen in such a real way?" She looked away, feeling warmth rise behind her eyes. Not tears, she refused to let tears form, but a pressure of emotion she had not felt in years. The storm grew louder, and the lights flickered. Evan walked to check the generator. While he worked, Zirla studied him carefully. His calm under pressure, his steady breathing, his simple determination. Humans were known for strength in battle. But she was learning something else. Humans had strength and gentleness too. A sudden crash outside shook the ground. Evan immediately grabbed a small light and opened the door just enough to look outside. Rain poured down in sheets. Something large had struck the side of the outpost. "What happened?" Zirla asked sharply. "Just a fallen branch," Evan said, though his voice held a small worry. "I need to go outside for a moment. If it blocks the drainage pipe, the outpost could flood." "I will assist," she said, trying to rise. He quickly returned to her side and gently pushed her shoulder down. "Absolutely not. You're injured. Please stay inside." Her eyes widened slightly. No one had ever spoken to her like that. No one dared to use please with her. No one dared to hold her back for her own safety. "You risk yourself again for me?" she asked. "For us," he said simply. Then grabbed his tools and stepped out into the storm. She watched him vanish into the darkness. The door slammed shut against the wind. For the first time since arriving, she felt something sharp inside, fear for him. Not for herself. For him. Minutes passed slowly. 2, slowly. The storm roared louder, and flashes of lightning revealed the shapes of trees bending under the wind. She wanted to get up. She wanted to follow him. But her arm was still healing, and every breath reminded her of the crash. She felt helpless again, a feeling she hated more than anything. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the door opened. Evan stepped back in, soaked from head to toe. Water ran down his face and jacket. He closed the door, locked it against the wind, and let out a tired breath. "It's cleared," he said. "We're safe." She exhaled in relief, though she didn't show it. He pulled off his jacket and placed it by the heater. "You look like you fought the storm," she said quietly. "It won," he joked, smiling. She felt something warm inside her chest. His smile, simple, honest, affected her in ways she did not expect. She studied the curve of his lips, the small lines near his eyes when he smiled, and how he shook water from his hair like a harmless creature instead of a warrior. He walked toward her again. "I'm sorry I worried you," she blinked. He noticed. He always noticed. "I was not worried," she started, but her voice was too soft, too unconvincing. She sighed. "Perhaps a little." His expression softened. "I'm glad." "Glad." She repeated. "It means you're healing," he said. "Not just your body, but everything else too." She had no answer for that. The storm calmed slowly, rain turning into soft drops tapping the roof. Evan made warm food for them, both her nutrient mixture and his own simple meal. They ate quietly, but it was not an uncomfortable silence. It was warm. At one point, Zirla looked at him and asked, "Evan, if I were not a queen, would you still help me?" "Yes," he said immediately. Of course, she nodded slowly. That answer meant more than he could understand. As the night settled deeper and the storm faded,
Ariella felt something she had not felt in years. Peace.
real peace. Not the cold silence of her throne room. Not the forced quiet of disciplined soldiers. Peace that came from another person being near. And as she drifted to sleep again, she realized something that shook her heart. She did not want to return to her empire. Not yet. Not while the warmth she had found here was still so new, so fragile, and so precious. Part 3 ends here. The storm had passed, but the moon felt strangely quiet the next morning. The air outside was fresh, washed clean by the night's rain. Inside the outpost, a soft golden light came through the window and rested gently on Queen Zerula's face. She blinked awake, taking in the calmness around her. The night had been long, full of fear and memories she didn't want to revisit. But now the world seemed still. Evan was already awake. She found him near the generator, checking wires and tightening bolts. His hands moved with practiced ease, each motion smooth and confident. He glanced at her and offered a warm smile. "Good morning," he said softly. "How's the arm?" She lifted it a little. The pain was less now, just a dull ache.
Better.
"Your treatment has helped. Good, you're healing fast." She watched him for a quiet moment. He looked tired, his eyes slightly red, his shoulders heavy, but he still worked without complaint. He had barely slept, watching her through the storm, keeping the outpost safe, repairing damaged equipment. Her people would have assigned 10 guards and 3 healers for such a task. Evan did it alone, calmly, and without asking for acknowledgement. "You did not sleep," she said. "A little," he replied, shrugging lightly. "I'm used to long nights. The outpost needs maintenance anyway." She frowned slightly. "You should rest." He laughed softly. "Are you giving me orders now?" She stiffened before she realized he was joking. Then, surprisingly, she felt the corners of her mouth pull slightly upward. Not a full smile, but a small warm expression she did not even know she could make. The morning continued peacefully. Evan made warm drinks for both of them. She sipped hers slowly, tasting a blend of herbs he had collected from the forest. He worked at the table while she observed him, studying his posture, his patience, and the quiet strength he carried without even knowing it. Then the peaceful silence was broken by a soft beep from one of his scanners. Evan looked up sharply. "Signal activity?" Zyrella tensed. "From where?" He walked to the console and checked the readings. A faint energy signature flickered on the screen, one she recognized instantly. Her heartbeat quickened. "It's a Valrix frequency," she said. Evan nodded. "I figured it's not close yet, but it's coming toward this region." She felt a strange mixture of relief and dread. Her people were searching for her, as she expected. They would scan every moon, every asteroid, every hidden corner of the system until they found her. But something inside her twisted uncomfortably. She was not ready to leave. Not ready to return to her cold throne, her silent halls, her stiff-voiced advisors. Not ready to walk away from the warmth she'd found here. "From him? You'll be safe," Evan said gently when he saw the tension in her shoulders. "When they arrive, you'll go back home." His words hit her harder than she expected. She lowered her gaze, not wanting him to see the emotion in her eyes. "Yes," she said quietly. "Home." The word felt heavy. Hours passed. They worked side by side repairing equipment, though she had limited use of her arm. She offered guidance on advanced technology while Evan listened carefully and adjusted his tools. Their worlds, once enemies, blended in simple cooperation at one point. He handed her a tool and accidentally brushed her fingers. She froze. The warmth of his touch lingered far longer than it should have. She quickly looked away, but Evan didn't notice her reaction. He simply continued working, unaware of how much she felt in that brief moment. Later, Zerella stepped outside for the first time since the crash. The air was cool and refreshing. The forest glistened with droplets from the storm. Evan followed her slowly, staying close in case she needed support. She examined the tall trees, strange plants, the small creatures moving between branches. "Your moon is peaceful," she said. "It grows on you," he replied. She walked a little careful with her balance. Evan stayed half a step behind, ready but not intrusive. She felt safe with him near, though she would never admit it aloud. After a while, she looked at him and asked a question she had never asked anyone before. "Evan, do humans always treat strangers with such kindness?" He took a moment before answering. "Not always. Some do. Some don't. But I believe helping someone is just part of being human." She absorbed his words slowly. "My people are taught that kindness weakens us. Maybe that's why you've carried so much weight alone," he said gently. The honesty of his answer touched her deeply. Like a soft light entering a dark corner inside her, they walked back to the outpost as evening approached. She felt tired but strangely lighter. More open, then the scanner beeped again. This time louder. More urgent. Evan checked the console, and his expression tightened. "The signal's stronger. It's definitely a Valric ship. And it's close." Zarilla felt her chest tighten painfully. There it was. The moment she had known would come. Her people had found her. Her empire would demand her return. And she's someone who had never feared anything in her life, felt fear now. Not of danger, but of leaving. Evan turned to her. "Do you want to send them a message?" She looked at him for a long second. His face was calm but serious, waiting for her decision. She could tell he was preparing himself to say goodbye. She lowered her head slightly. "Not yet." Yvonne looked surprised. "Are you sure?" "Yes," she whispered. "Just not yet." He nodded slowly, understanding more than she expected. Over the next hour, she grew quieter. Evan noticed every change, the way her eyes drifted toward him more often, the way her breaths came deeper, the way she seemed to be memorizing the room, the forest, and even the sound of his voice. Finally, night fell. Soft moonlight entered the small window, and she sat on the bed, staring at her injured arm, then at Evan, who worked quietly nearby. "Evan," she said in a gentle voice she rarely used, "when my people arrive, they may misunderstand. They might think you captured me, or harmed me." "I can explain," he said calmly. "They will not listen to you." He stopped working and looked at her. "Then what do you want me to do?" She swallowed softly. The answer was simple. Hard, heavy. "Stay alive," she said. "No matter what happens, do not let them harm you because of me." There was real emotion in her voice. Now something warmer, something real. Evan stepped closer, meeting her eyes. "I'm not afraid," he said quietly. "You should be," she replied. "For the first time, I do not want harm to come to someone." The way she said it made his breath catch. Silence fell between them. Emotional, honest silence. Then the scanner beeped again. Evan checked it. "They've entered the atmosphere." Zirla felt her heart drop. She stood slowly, even though it hurt. Her head felt heavy. Her chest felt tight. This was the last night she would spend here. The last night with him. The last night of warmth before she returned to her cold throne. Evan walked to her side, ready to support her if she needed it. She looked at him not as a queen, not as a ruler, but as a woman changed by kindness. "Stay beside me," she whispered, "until they arrive." "I will," he said, and together they waited, knowing everything was about to change, yet neither wanting the moment to end. The night felt heavier than usual, as if the air itself understood what was coming. Queen Zirilla sat quietly on the edge of the medical bed while Evan stood beside her, listening to the soft hum of the scanners. Outside, the wind was calm, the forest peaceful, but the sky above them was no longer empty. A faint glow moved behind the clouds of Alrix, ships searching for their queen. Zirilla looked at Evan. His presence beside her felt warm and steady, anchoring her to this small outpost. In the brief days she had spent here, she had learned the shape of his voice, the rhythm of his steps, the way he frowned when something worried him, and the gentle way he spoke when she was afraid. She did not want to lose any of it. "Their landing pattern is close," Evan said softly as he watched the scanner. "They'll reach this area within the hour." She nodded slowly. Yes, they come for me. He glanced at her face and saw something he never expected to see in the ruler of such a powerful empire: sadness. Not weakness, not fear, but the quiet sadness of someone who already missed something she hadn't lost yet. You don't have to be scared, Evan said gently. I am not scared, she replied. Then paused before adding in a softer voice, I am. Unwilling? Unwilling? She met his eyes. Unwilling to return to the cold silence? Unwilling to leave this place? Unwilling to leave? She stopped herself before the last word formed. But Evan understood. He sat beside her carefully, close enough that she could feel his warmth. You don't have to say anything you're not ready to, he said. Zirila looked at her hands in her lap. They trembled slightly. Her people would never believe it, Queen Zirila, trembling like a child. Yet Evan didn't judge her. He never had. At last she whispered, You changed something inside me. Something I thought could never change. He swallowed, his heart beating faster. I didn't do anything special. You did enough, she said. Enough to show me what it means to be seen as a person, not as a weapon or a symbol. Her voice softened further, and enough to make me realize I do not wish to return to who I was. But time was no longer theirs. For outside, the distant sound of engines grew louder. A small tremor ran through the ground as a Valrix scout ship descended into the nearby clearing. Evan and Zirila stood slowly. She held her injured arm close to her side, and he instinctively moved to support her. She didn't stop him. Evan, she said quietly, when they see you, they will assume you held power over me. They may attack first. Let them try, he said, though she could hear the worry hidden behind his calm tone. No, Zirila said firmly. I will protect you. He blinked. You shouldn't have to. You protected me, she said. Now it is my turn. A bright blue light cut through the tree line outside as the ship landed. The outpost shook slightly. Heavy footsteps approached the unmistakable, synchronized march of Valrix soldiers. Their energy weapons hummed with power. Evan felt tension rise in his chest. Zirila stood straighter, lifting her chin. Even injured, she looked like royalty strong. Proud. Controlled. The door burst open. A squad of 6 armored Valrix soldiers entered, their weapons aimed directly at Evan. Zirila stepped in front of him instantly, blocking their line of fire. Her eyes flashed with the authority of a ruler who would not tolerate harm to the one who saved her. Stand down, she commanded. The soldiers froze. Even injured, her voice cut through the room like a blade. One soldier stepped forward, bowing deeply. Your Majesty, we feared the humans had captured you. It did not, she said sharply. This human saved my life. Confusion rippled among the soldiers. They looked at Evan again, unsure what to do. Another soldier spoke cautiously. Queen Zirila, you are changed. Evan looked at her then, noticing how true the words were. She stood differently, now not cold, not rigid, but alive with emotion. She no longer hid behind armor. I am alive, she said, and I owe that to him. Her soldiers exchanged uncertain glances. Showing gratitude was unheard of in their culture. Showing it toward a human was unthinkable. Yet here she was, standing between him and their weapons. We must return you to the flagship, one soldier insisted. The council is waiting. Zirila hesitated. Evan saw the way her chest tightened, the way her eyes lowered. For a moment she looked almost small, caught between duty and something deeper. He touched her hand gently, just once. It's okay, he whispered. You should go home. She felt her breath catch at the word home. The outpost felt more like a home than her entire empire ever had. She turned to him. And what of you? I'll be fine, he said with a soft smile. You don't have to worry. I do worry, she whispered, and the honesty in her voice made the soldiers exchange shocked glances. Evan stepped closer, speaking quietly so only she could hear. You're safe now. And I'm glad I got to know you. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with a deep, warm emotion she could no longer hide. I am glad you found me, she said. If you had not, I would have died in the darkness, thinking no one cared. He shook his head gently. You weren't alone. She looked at him for a long moment, memorizing his face. his eyes, his quiet strength. Then she stepped back. Slowly, painfully, choosing duty even though her heart reached in another direction. The soldiers surrounded her, guiding her toward the door. But before leaving, she turned sharply, her regal voice rising. "Do not harm this human," she declared. "He is under my protection." The soldiers bowed. "Yes, Your Majesty." Evan felt a swell of relief. As she reached the door, she paused one last time and looked back at him. Her expression softened in a way only he had seen. It was a goodbye, but not an ending. A promise lingered in her eyes. Then she walked out into the clearing, stepping into the light of her people's ship. The soldiers escorted her aboard, and the door sealed behind her. Evan stood alone in the quiet outpost, watching the royal vessel rise. It glowed bright blue, lifting through the trees until it disappeared into the sky. The silence that followed felt deeper than before. The forest was still. The world was calm. But the outpost felt empty without her. For a long moment, he simply stood where she had been, remembering every word, every look. Every moment of unexpected warmth. 3 days passed. On the 4th morning, the sky trembled again, but not with danger. A small transport ship appeared, marked with Valric's royal symbols. It landed gently near the outpost. Evan stood outside, heart pounding. The door opened. Queen Zyrilla stepped out. No longer injured, no longer alone, but wearing a softer expression than he had ever seen. "I told my council," she said as she approached him, "that I will no longer rule from cold distance. I will rule with understanding." With heart, stared at her, stunned. "And they agreed?" "They did not," she said, a hint of amusement in her voice. "But I am the queen." He laughed softly. Then she stepped closer. "I returned," she said quietly, "because I do not wish to lose what I found here." Evan felt warmth bloom in his chest. "And what is that?" he asked. Her eyes met his with gentle certainty. "You." And in that moment, the cold heart of an alien queen melted completely, not by force, not by fear, but by the simple, human warmth she had never known before.